Okay. Baruch Hashem, I'm happy to be here again. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad the AC works here. Top of the line. The AC is Baruch Hashem. There was some people here a few times. It got really, really hot, and they stayed in different locations that we were at. It's a great location. I love that location. Although this is much closer in terms of me getting here driveways, but Baruch Hashem, you know, this is Hashem taking care of you guys. You showed yourself when it was hot, when the AC was broken. Now the AC is working. Baruch Hashem. This is Hashem taking care of everybody. Today I'm going to talk about something. It's not complex. Giving it over maybe a little complex. If there's someone doesn't understand it, it's likely my fault. It's in how I deliver it, and less likely because you guys don't understand it. I took on something a little bit more challenging because I know this group is very intelligent. So that's why I chose to do it in that way. But I'll make sure people walk away here with something in the pocket. You have some profit in the pocket. I want you to walk away with something. That's the goal. So we're going to discuss Parashat Shelach, which is it's a parasha that is, unfortunately, there's aspects of it where it's very infamous. It's famous for the wrong reasons, essentially. And why is that? It's probably the last nail in the coffin for the Jewish people, unfortunately, because this is the sin that Hashem says, I'm done. This generation is not going into Eretz Yisrael. And what's very fascinating is Hashem says, you tried me 10 times, and this was the last time. Hashem tells the Jewish people, time after time, I've been there for you, I've provided for you, I've done miracles for you. But this last thing was the straw that broke the camel's back. But there's a tremendous insight that I want to share with you guys. But I'll give you just a very brief story of what happened here. So Moshe comes to Hashem and says, we're going into Eretz Yisrael. You want to send spies. God told them, the land is good. But if you want to send spies, tfaddal, send spies. Go. Not a problem. You don't have to. In fact, I probably don't recommend it. But if you want to send spies, we have a behira. We have a choice. We're allowed to do it. So Moshe Rabbeinu sends spies. But God says it's good land. Unfortunately, they come back and they give a bad report. What's the report they give? Eretz ochelet yoshvea. This is a land that consumes its inhabitants. There are giants there. And to illustrate that there are giants there and that the giants are going to essentially destroy the Jewish people, because they were scared that they said, we find this later in Sefer Devarim, not only they're going to kill us, but they're also going to kill our babies. And they said all these things that caused national hysteria among the Jewish people. So Hashem says at this point, I told you it's good, you decided to come back and give a bad report. So what I'm trying to understand is, what do they do that's so bad, really? If you wanna go out and spy on the land and look at a land, you're gonna come back and do what? Bring the report of the land. So what do? There are giants there. How do we know there are giants there? They brought a massive cluster of grape. Probably one grape is the size of a human being. So they said, look, if one grape is the size of a human being, it must mean there's giants there. So that was how they illustrated what was going on there. And they saw how one group of people were devouring the other group of people. That's what they actually saw. What did they do that was so bad here? What's the problem what they did? They just spied on the land. That should be the thing that prevents them from going into Eretz Yisrael. Which, by the way, if they would have went there, it would have been a culmination of essentially Mashiach coming into Eretz Yisrael, etc., etc. It would have been already in the next world. But no, because of the bad report, they're not going into Eretz Yisrael. What's so bad about you? They saw it as it is, as the facts were. There's a question by the Baal Shem Tov. So I just want to understand this first thing is, what did they do that was so bad? Why is this bad report? We have to have some real insight here. The second thing is, we have a very compelling question by the Baal Shem Tov. And he says, After the Jewish people, they realized that they were wrong. They realized, wait a second. They said, now, since God said, okay, the land is good, they decided we're not going to the land because the land is not good of all these bad things. The next morning, Moshe Rabbeinu gives them criticism. The people tell him how wrong they were. You know what they said? I'll read you the pasuk. They said, "V'yashkiu avoker v'ya'alu el rosh ha'ar." So they woke up early in the morning, right? Lomar hinenu ve'alinu el makom asher amar Adonai ki hatanu. We want to go up to the land. We want to go into the land. We sinned. We made a mistake. We sinned. So we have a rule, right? Modeh ve'ozev yeruham. If a person confesses that he did something wrong, right? God forgives. God says, okay, forgive. Says the Baal Shem Tov, they said they're sorry. What's the problem here? They did tshuva. They did a form of tshuva. How come does Hashem here specifically now says no, not accepting it? Not accepting it. These are two things we're trying to understand. What did the spies do that is so bad? And secondly is they did tshuva. So how come God did not accept it? If you pay close attention, I'm going to read you exactly what happened. When they said the next morning, the land is good, we changed our mind, we want to go. What actually happened there? I'm going to read it to you. They said, God, we sinned. And then the pasuk says, they said, we want to go up with the Jewish people, and we want to go and we want to inherit the land with everybody else. But by now it was too late. God says, no. Now you can't go to the land. No, but we want to go. God, we want to go to the land. Let us go, let us fight. No. I'm telling you, before, it was good and you thought it was bad. Now I'm telling you, it's bad for you to go. You can't go. So what do? They want to go. What did they end up doing? Did they end up listening? No. They ended up going. They ended up going into the land and fighting the Canaanim and the Amalekim, and they all died. There was a portion of them died. Which means, when God told them the first go around, the land is good, you should go, right? They said, no, we don't want to go. Now the second time, they're doing the same thing. God, we want to go, the land is no good, I don't want you to go. What are they doing? They're going. Which means, they're doing exactly the same sin. God, they did not listen to what Hashem was telling them. There's a lot more to this, and I want to explain what that means. That they did not listen to what Hashem is telling them. What essentially drove their sense of right and wrong? When a person wants to do something, what drives their sense of this is right, this is wrong? Typically, our sense of right and wrong in our behavior is driven by my level of understanding. The way I understand something. The way I understand something is what drives my sense of right and wrong, and that's what drives my behavior. They had their assessment of facts. They assessed the facts. They came in, they said, wait, the land, we can't go to the land. They're going to kill us if we go to the land. After they realized they were wrong, right? That they took that understanding, the land is not good for us, we're not going. Then Moshe Rabbeinu proved them otherwise. Okay, we made a mistake, we're sorry, we're not going to do this again. Yeah, a few of them died, etc. They got punished. Maybe that, had played some degree, some role, some effect on them. But then again, their understanding is, no, now we want to go. Now you want to go? But it's not, I'm telling you, it's not good for you to go. Which means everything boils down to what? Their sense of right and wrong, their sense of understanding. And this is one of the biggest challenges we have with morality, especially contemporary morality. What do I mean by contemporary morality? Today, I think something is right. Yesterday, I thought it was wrong. Or maybe I flip on it. You have this problem with hospitals often. Hospitals are going to determine this patient is not going to wake up. He's not. How do you know he's not going to wake up? Well, because I'm not a person who hallucinates, right? But okay, the odds are against this person. But many people did wake up. Deciding to pull the plug, and I have some experience in hospitals, unfortunately, and I know this because my father was a very sick man, and I realized how there's a lot of good to hospitals. Let me preface with that, right? There's tremendous good, there's a lot of good to hospitals. They heal people, they do amazing things, they're able to diagnose things quickly. I'm not, God forbid, speaking on a negative side of it. I'm saying there's aspects to it where there is something driven by maybe numbers, by business, driven by, it's this person lived 60, 70 years, enough. Who are you to make that decision? Who are you to decide how long someone lives? Okay, the odds are against them. That could be, but each patient is, you take a patient based on the circumstances of the patient. And you look at it, you don't know. This is one of the biggest issues that we have, is because a lot of times morality by human beings, it shifts. One day it's like this, one day it's like that. And that's something that's the biggest challenge that we have today. It comes out, all issues of morality have to have an absolute standard, that it doesn't change. It's not a popularity poll. Whatever is popular, that's what we're doing. Okay, it's popular today that you have 17 genders. No, it doesn't work like that. It's not something, I'm not trying to get political, I'm being very real. There is, historically speaking, there's been absurd things that happen that if you want to ask me personally, especially in the Roman Empire, I can tell you things because I read it. I don't want to say it because I'm repulsed by it, that it was a standard norm of behavior. It was adults and children together. It was crazy. These things were outrageous. Okay, but that was normal back then. No, it's not normal. It's never normal. It's never going to be normal. There's certain absolute morality that we have to follow. And that morality cannot be left to a human being to make that decision. We need to have a standard. And that standard must come from a higher power, which is the Torah, which is, obviously comes from Hashem. And that was one of the biggest problems with the spies. The spies, how do we know that they were driven by what they want? Because the second go around said, God says, no, it's not good for you, don't go. What do? They went. Which means, what do? What they're doing? They were driven strictly by their level of understanding. And I want to talk about understanding because it's such an important thing. One of the biggest challenges we have, I think, with ourselves, and it could also be one of the biggest evils. And I kid you not when it says it could be one of the biggest evils and the biggest challenges. Is the more you understand something, my rabbi taught me this unbelievable lesson, the more we are driven by a level of understanding. So the more I understand something, right, the more I'm driven by that level of understanding. What does that mean? I'm going to explain because I know it sounds a little bit confusing. What am I supposed to do? I do things based on my understanding. There's no other way for me to do it. What's the whole concept of understanding? If I learn something, I'm learning about something. Learning about something gives me more understanding. That's a great thing. But it should not be the basis of why I do something. Which means anytime I am learning and understanding, it's supposed to motivate me to act and to change. It's motivating me, but it's not the reason why I do it. Because if I do it based on my understanding, then what comes out? That I'm always going to change. I'm going to shift. But I can use understanding, right? And growing, I can use it. Okay, let me act. Let me motivate. The basis of moral decisions are not supposed to be based on how I understand them. It's supposed to be because Hashem told me it's the right thing to do, and we have a book, and He gave us a Sefer Torah, and He told us what the clear standard of morality is. A prime example, and did you guys hear? I never understood this example. I think it's such a fallacy. Maybe you heard this example. They say, Israel, if there are terrorists, right, and they're shooting out of let's say a building, and in that building there are kids, and there are families in there. So people say, this is the example they give. What happened if that was in Israel? And a Jewish Israeli person came in and took people hostage at a bank. Would you drop a bomb and take out the bank with everybody? Would you do something like that? You wouldn't do that, right? That's the analogy they give. It is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. And I want to explain why. It's very simple. They are under the impression that this is the same country. they're under the impression that the Jewish people, right, live in Gaza. They don't. Which means, who's Israel responsible for its citizens? They're not responsible for the citizens of the enemy. The life of their citizens comes first. It's a priority. Everybody can understand that, right? The life of their citizens comes first. So if the life of the citizen comes first, I don't need to make these calculations. And I'll tell you why. If they're shooting from one side, and so I'm supposed to sit back and do nothing and allow them to shoot at me because there's people there? No, that's not how it works. If they decide to embed themselves in an area or intentionally put kids at a harm risk, they're responsible for citizens, we're responsible for our citizens. So when you give me that crazy analogy, it blows my mind. They're not the same. We're responsible for our citizens, not for their citizens. You expect me to equate both of them as one? No. You're out to get me. You're out to kill me. I'm not going to take into consideration the citizens. I'm going to do what I can to try to avoid, God forbid, not harming it, because there are innocent to a certain extent. There are a lot of children, right? There are those. Is there a 5-year-old kid? He doesn't know. We can understand that. We should do what we can to the best of our ability to avoid killing them, no question. But we shouldn't sit back and allow them to shoot. And we say, oh no, we can't do it because, no, it doesn't work like that. So we're going to risk our citizens. And just because, no, it doesn't work like that. That's not, the moral equivalence is out of this world. They're not linked. They're not analogous whatsoever. We have a responsibility, the Israel has a responsibility towards their own citizens. Just like if it was America and Mexico.
America killed 1 million people.
There are, it's true, there are those things. No,
no one cancels America though.
You're right. Which is absolutely true, and that's what many people, thank God, we have people out there who kind of fight for that, right? No, it's an outrageous thing.
That's 100 times more.
No, I know, it's an outrageous thing. But the point I'm trying to say is, when we lose touch of moral, the morality differences, if someone comes and wants to take us out and kill us, we have the right to retaliate back. We're not doing it because we enjoy killing, God forbid, and as I'm telling you, the perspective of the Torah, we feel awful if someone dies that's innocent. That's never the intention. But we don't have the responsibility, right, to risk our own people at the expense of their people. That's not the and America is true with Mexico. If there was something in Mexico, athletically, that doesn't change. We need to learn how to prioritize those differences. I kind of went off topic a little bit here.
America did what it did when the border wasn't even next to them. Like Gaza's right next to Israel, right? It's like Iraq was the Israel.
Right. That's the difference.
It's crazy because we actually need to defend our border.
Yeah, it's part of it.
It's even more important that we defend our border.
No, right. I mean, we know how complex situation. The goal is not to get political here. The goal is I'm just trying to explain our level of morality. There are, by the way, there are rules and laws. Maimonides codifies rules and laws of war. Before you start a war, you have to give a chance for a warning to the other side. You have to say, we want to make peace with you first. We want to try and make it right. You can't just wage a war because you feel like it. You're not allowed to do it. There's many ways you have to do before you decide to choose a war. But there is exception. If they wage a war on you, you can wage a war back. We know that's what happened essentially. But there are exceptions to the rule. And I've actually listened to a whole very complex talk about this from a halakha perspective, which comes out to the following thing. The reason we do things cannot be because I understand it. And I also want to kind of take it one step further. Human beings. We have our good things and we have our things that we struggle with ourselves. But there are two specific traits that we have within ourselves that we struggle with. One is, don't tell me what to do. Don't control me. That's it's very self-evident when you're married. I can tell you that. John is laughing because he knows. That's one area. Don't control me. Don't tell me what to do. On either side, men and women. The one thing is, that's one thing. And if you try to control me, I'm going to rebel. So that's one character trait that we often have a problem is don't try to control me. Second thing is, it's a little bit more by men than it is by women because of how we are designed. Men are made from the earth and women are made from the bone. So they tend to be the bone itself is lighter than the earth, right? And because God took the bone out of the man and made woman in it. So oftentimes, are there exceptions to the rule? Sure. But generally men tend to be heavier, there's a sense of laziness that we can carry with ourselves. I just want to sit back, relax, especially after eating, let me be. It's a thing that, right, yeah. Oftentimes you see women on their feet, left and right, doing all these things, moving all the time. But we have the trait, everyone, men and women both have it, but we have a trait of laziness that holds us down. These two traits, oftentimes, what do? They conquer our mind, and and because of these two traits, don't try to control me, don't try to tell me what to do, specifically that trait, and also a bit of the laziness, oftentimes, it's going to affect our level of what is truly right and what is truly wrong. What is objectively right, what is objectively wrong. Therefore, understanding is not the engine that should drive our action. It becomes very dangerous once we rely on understanding. What drive our action should be a clear, an absolute concept of right and wrong. And I hear this often on Shabbat. Shabbat is great. After 6 days of work, I rest on Shabbat. It's fantastic, right? It's time for family. I'm disconnected from the world. All these things they're my level of, let's say, of understanding of Shabbat, but it cannot be the reason why I keep the Shabbat. I keep the Shabbat because as Jews, God worked 6 days, He rested on the seventh. We have to emulate that and reflect that we believe that reality, that God was involved in 6 days of creation. On the seventh day, God disconnected from creative activity, and God ceased all form of activity, and that we're emulating, we're doing the same exact thing as God did. That's something Shabbat. A person may not be at a level right now where they can fully jump on and keep Shabbat, but can they stop driving on Shabbat? Can they get to that level when they say, you know what? I'm not fully there to keep Shabbat, but can I take on one thing? Can I hold on to it on Shabbat in one thing? Can I just hold on to it? Maybe I'm not going to drive for a few months. And then I'm not going to turn on the light. Can I grow into Shabbat? The expectation is not to do it fully. The expectation is to grow over time. But the understanding Shabbat will enhance my experience of Shabbat. But it cannot be the reason why I keep Shabbat, something that Hashem told us. By the way, what are the chances? And I know now, especially after what happened, but what are the chances that if you take upon yourself and say, you know what, I keep Shabbat. I decided I'm going to keep Shabbat. And I'm going to be doing it very, very soon, and I'm on the path and I'm growing. What are the chances that, God forbid, you would assimilate yourself with non-Jew? Very low. Because Shabbat is a pivotal part of your life. What is the chances that your children, if you keep Shabbat, and they keep Shabbat, and there are exceptions, sure, what are the chances that they might assimilate? Even if they go to college. There's certain things where you're going to ingrain and inculcate in the child that it's not likely to happen. Could it happen? Yes. It depends on the education you give them. If you put them in public school, that could happen. But if you put them in Jewish-based education, I'm not saying you have to send them to the most religious school, but at least a Jewish-based. There's plenty of schools over here that are very much. You have both obviously the secular and the yeshiva, but the learning as one that is, I would say modern in that regard, but it has that orthodox values that they give. That's very healthy. At the very least, you're giving them that Jewish education. What you're doing is you're also guaranteeing your next generation. So there's all these reasons, but ultimately, what we do something cannot be why I understand it. It comes out that, learning is all about motivation. Visual experience is all about motivation. In this week's parasha, at the last portion of this week's parasha is actually something unbelievable. We have the mitzvah of tzitzit. You guys are familiar with the mitzvah of tzitzit, right? We have tzitzit. Tzitzit we put in the morning. We have it put on the talit. Some people have grown and are spiritual. They add a tzitzit to their life. And we say Shema Yisrael in the morning and the evening. Some people even say it before they go to sleep. There's a very, very fascinating Rashi on tzitzit. It's an incredible Rashi. And I want to tell you what he says. So we said, the pasuk goes like this, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel, ve'amata alehem ve'asu lehem tzitzit. You guys know this portion, right? And then it continues, ve'alechem letzitzit uritem tov. And then the final part, this is the part I really want to focus on, is the following. We say like this. והיה לכם ציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם. The pasuk says you should not follow your heart and you should not follow your eyes. That's what Hashem says. Now, the classic question is, what goes first, the heart or the eyes? My heart is going to essentially desire what I see. So first I need to see something, and once I see something, then I'm going to desire, right? That's the way it works, right? You see, maybe there's food on the table, all of a sudden you're hungry, right? There is that aspect, but the heart typically follows what the eye see. So why does the Torah say the reverse? First the heart, and then it says the eyes. You should not follow your heart, and then you should not follow your eyes. So I want to tell you what Rashi writes. It's unbelievable. Rashi says like this. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם. And it's funny because, and this is the week where we discuss spies. It's not by coincidence. He says, הלב והעיניים, the heart and the eyes, הם מרגלים לגוף. The heart and the eyes are spies for the body. They spy out what? What the body wants, what the heart essentially wants. They're spies. So you had spies that go to the land to check out the land, and then the body also has spies to look for things, to see the things that it actually wants and desires. And then he says, "Ha'ain ro'a va'alev homed." The eye sees and the heart desires. Rashi explains it exactly the opposite of the verse. The verse is first the heart, then the eyes. How does Rashi understand it? Exactly the opposite. How did Rashi come to understand it? Exactly the opposite of that? So we know the eye spy out, right? Everybody can understand that. And the heart desires. But let me ask you a question. What do the eyes see? What do the eyes see?
What you want to see.
What the heart desires. The eyes are trained to see what the heart desires exactly. Which means the source of the desire is in the heart. That's why the Torah comes says, don't follow your heart and then do not follow your eyes. Because your eyes are trained to see exactly where your heart desires. Which means nobody, and by the way, obviously we're going to be pro-Israel, but that's not to say that there isn't some valid points even on the Palestinian side. This is what I'm saying. There could be actual facts, literally, and we won't accept those facts. And if we're being objective, we can be mostly on the right side. That could be true, but it doesn't mean we're 100% perfect. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Because the idea here is nobody wants to be confused by facts. Nobody wants, and it's a very hard thing. Wait, is there an actual factor that I'm missing? Am I seeing it only from that perspective? Well, yes. If that's how you want to see it, then yes, you're only going to see that perspective. And by the way, it's true to everybody. It doesn't matter if they hold a spiritual position, if they hold any form of position of authority, it doesn't change. Everybody has their perspective, and they're going to look for things that are going to be consistent with their perspective. Which comes out that if I rely on that, then it means that I become the final arbiter of truth. And if I become the final arbiter of truth, I see it clear. The problem is I see what I want to see. I don't see it how it actually is. By the way, I can't tell you how true this is, especially when you want to get married. If sometimes someone is in a relationship for a long time, and because of they've gotten used to the relationship, but it's such a toxic relationship, it's such a bad relationship, right? That essentially people say, no matter, because it's emotionally driven, they're not willing to take a step back and say, wait a second, hold on a second. Are there facts here that I'm not able to see because my heart really, my emotion, my desire wants that person, so I can't see anything else other than me wanting that person. That's and oftentimes people pull the trigger on something like this. Only 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 10 years down the line, they realize, wow, This is what I was told, and I didn't get it. Because I was, what drove my decision? My understanding in that moment. What was my understanding of that moment? Based on what I wanted. Because I understand things based on what I want, not based on what is actually objective to me. And therefore I made that decision based on that. And now unfortunately there are consequences to that. So it comes down to what are our standards? Our standards are, what I want is one standard, and what I understand is the second standard. And all the assessments of the facts will depend on that. Whenever morality is going to be based on my understanding, then the morality will be, let me say it differently. Whenever morality is based on my level of understanding, then the morality will be based on what I want. And that's the biggest challenge we have. And by the way, this is what makes the media so powerful. The reason the media is so powerful, the reason social media is so powerful, is because they position a picture from an angle they understand and show it to you in that angle to influence you or your position or to reinforce whatever is actually there. So you have people, they have a certain perspective on something, and they'll position it in that way. And that goes for both. All media, left, right, in between, it doesn't actually matter. Nothing is truly trusted because as human beings, it's not something we can truly overcome. It's not something you overcome. Therefore, the rabbis come and they say, you have a doubt? Go to your rabbi. Go to someone close to you at the very least, where they know you, they know your family dynamics, they know your strengths and weaknesses, they know what you struggle with, they know what you're good at, they know what you're not good at, they know where you tend to fail or where you tend to succeed. And then you give them, Rabbi, this is the situation. What does the rabbi do? He taps into the algorithm of the Torah, and he tells you, based on the algorithm of the Torah, based on what I know you, I think this is the best decision for you moving forward. That's not to say that, provided you have someone you really trust, you have a real relationship. You know, there's people who go to 4 or 5 different rabbis just to get the answer they want. Okay? That's not exactly success. And you're not supposed to do that either, by the way. There's no bracha. There's no siyata d'ishmaya. You're not going to get the help min hashamayim. Because what you're doing is you're just trying to reinforce what you already want. So don't go to the rabbi, do what you want, and that's it, call it a day. You need something spiritually to reinforce that in your conscience so you don't feel guilty. That's not how things work. For this reason, humans cannot be the final arbiters of truth. Every understanding that we have is if it's just supposed to motivate me to do something. It's supposed to motivate me to change, to do better, right? Whatever it is, even obviously, you know, if I'm even going to speak to this side of the room, obviously men and women alike, like they enjoy attention. They do. Everyone wants to get recognition, right? For whatever it is, men work so hard to have nice stuff, so that gives them the credibility and the attention they want. I get it. It's fine. Everybody's like that to a certain extent. You want to be able to provide with it for your family or whatever it is. On the flip side, and I think I spoke this before, it's a good feeling to get attention, especially if I behave or dress in a way that's going to bring me that attention. It's going to satisfy the craving that I have that attention. Yeah, it's a good feeling, but that good feeling may not be the attention you want to draw into your life, because there could be consequences. And I oftentimes say this: the type of a person you're going to attract based on the way you dress, that means they're attracted just based on an external thing about you. They're not really attracted based on who you are as a whole. And so, there's an aspect where the perception of it, I think most guys will tell you, initially, yes, that's what I see, that's what I'm attracted to. And that's one of the things that oftentimes we don't pay attention to, because in the moment, what do I want? I want to get that attention. I might meet my future husband. That's a valid thing to say. So I want to be out there. So I might meet my future husband. That's a fair claim. I can understand that logic. I can. But that doesn't mean that, even though that's what I want per se, that doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. And that's a very difficult thing. It's a very, very difficult thing because oftentimes it can attract the wrong type of husband. I'm not saying all the time, but oftentimes. I'm not saying you can't meet a husband and wife in the club. You know, I'm sure there's instances of that happening, but I think you have a better shot of meeting them in a shiur Torah than you do in a club. At least long term. I think the long-term success would be probably higher. I didn't do any study on this. I'm just using my common sense. If I'm wrong, please tell me. The idea here is the spies saw what they wanted to see. By the way, do you guys know why they saw what they wanted to see? They're all the 12 spies they were in a position of leadership. And you know what happened when they go into Eretz Israel? It was no longer going to be the same for them. They thought we're no longer going to be in that same position of leadership. So what did? They painted a picture and presented it so they can preserve their position. And now they had a reason to say the land is not good. That's what essentially they were driven by. They were driven by, this is good for us. This is what we know. We may lose our position. It doesn't change anything. This is what's good. This is what's good. I've got to do it. The rabbis say, there's a pasuk in Mishle that says, "Umotzi diba hu chsim." What does that mean? Umotzi diba hu chsim. A fool is somebody who thinks his perception of reality is true. That's the definition of a fool. That's a very heavy statement. That means that's how careful we need to be every time we want to assess a situation, especially one that includes critical decisions for our life. We have to be very, very careful. And don't get me started on how much you need to pray. We spoke about prayer. You know, I asked a scholar, a very big scholar. He has successful children. All of them are successful. And I said to him, can you give me advice on how to raise children? You know, what to do? And this is a big guy. He looks at me and he says, all we have is tefillah. I was like, and that statement hit me very hard. He says, I know a guy, he tells me, regular, simpleton, average Joe. 10 of his kids, extremely successful. Each one after one. He says, I'll tell you what, and this is what he tells. He says, he wasn't a person who learned as much. He got into Bet Knesset. Tefillah was tefillah. His prayers was praise. He prayed constantly. And I asked him, so what do you specifically pray? He says, that my kids should go in the way of Hashem. That my kids should have humility, that their fear of Hashem will always outweigh their intelligence. That their fear of Hashem should always outweigh their intelligence. That's what he said to me. And he says, that's all I pray for. And that they should do the will of Hashem, whatever Hashem wants to do. And I want to tell you, he has 2 kids who are Jewish judges, which is very difficult. He has 2 other ones where both of them are extremely wealthy, and one is he's also a massive scholar. And they have another one who lives in Eretz Israel, who does unbelievable things. He's also a massive scholar, and he's extremely successful in Israel. You know, being successful in Israel is not an easy thing to do. So he's a massive scholar, and he's successful in Israel. And it's an unbelievable thing. And it's just the aspect of tefillah itself. But this is what I say is, it's not that we cannot make decisions on your own. You can make decisions on your own, and you will make decisions on your own, and you should make decisions on your own. But we should not be overconfident that our decision is right just because I understand what I'm doing. That level of overconfidence oftentimes is what shoots us in the leg. If you go to prison, not God forbid you guys actually go to prison, but if you were to visit prison, people who are in prison, you ask them, hey, why were you there? And I read a book on this. Most people don't think they actually did a crime. In fact, they think they did a favor to society. I kid you not. When you ask them, why are you here? I didn't do anything wrong. What happened? But it says you killed this and this. Yeah, I did kill him. Because this person was a hazard to society. I did society a favor. Now they want to punish me for this. It's ridiculous. They actually have that mindset, that reality. It's there. Because a person cannot live with the fact that, oh, I'm a bad person. Nobody can live with that I'm a bad person, so I have to justify that behavior and say, no, what I did was I did society a favor. Therefore,
what do you think is like the point where like let's say it's Hamas, right? So you kill Hamas, right? What's your ethical point when you kill someone? Like I know someone who the wife drowned their kid and then he kills one of their kids.
I can't hear you.
I know somebody and his wife drowned their kid on purpose and then he killed her.
Listen, these are awful things.
Yeah.
I oftentimes, I don't know that, you have to know details of this. These are unspeakable things, right? They're crazy. And there is a specific order that we live in a world where if there's a crime, right? There's a specific, is it perfect? No. Is the justice system perfect? Far from it. There are major issues for sure, especially they're politically driven. Like everybody can understand what's happening to Donald Trump is crazy. What they're trying to, put him for crime. You don't have to like Donald Trump, but you could just realize I looked into the case a little bit. It doesn't seem something that's real. Why you criminalize something? I'm not particularly crazy Trump guy. I'm really not. I have my issues with him where I can even discuss this, but it's not even the case here. You realize if the political system could be driven by, the legal system can be driven, oftentimes is driven by politics. It all is, and it's a very unfortunate. But there's a system in place, and for right now, I think that's pretty much what needs to be done. But at the end of the day, we have a halakha. Even if someone is patur b'dinei adam, which means even if somebody gets, they get exonerated down here, they're not, even though they are guilty, and we know they're guilty, but somehow it comes out that they're actually exonerated in the court of law. Hayav b'dinei shamayim. In shamayim, they will take care of the person. And we have to believe that. We have no choice. We have no choice to believe that God is the final arbiter and the final judge in every person's life and reality. And if we try to control that, we try to control the concept of justice, we're going to lose our mind. You cannot control the concept of justice. Justice is left to Hashem. It's in Hashem's hands. He will decide when something happens, how it happens. It can be very, very difficult, very painful. But the ultimate justice must come from a higher being. Now, we still have to put judges in place. We still have to, the whole idea of the legal system is also to deter criminal behavior. I'm not saying it's particularly effective, but that's one of the concepts. Therefore, we need the standard and morality of the Torah. We need it. We can't live without it. It's very important because otherwise, you realize what the devil did in Nazi Germany, Hitler. You realize what he was capable of doing. Oh, the Jews. The economy is bad because of the Jews. The Jews control the media. The Jews this, the Jews that. If that's your perception, so what do? You look for the facts. You look for certain things that are true, and then what do? You attach it to that concept. Oh, look, it's true. It's not true. Are there successful Jews? Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are. That doesn't mean that all Jews are like this, and it doesn't mean that just because a Jew, they reflect or live Jewish lifestyle in the religious sense of the word, or even culturally speaking. Many people, unfortunately, do not live that reality or lifestyle, and there could be the top 10 billionaires. I think 4 or 5 of them are Jews in the world. I highly doubt any of them has any real Jewish religious connection. I may be wrong, but at least you don't know it outwardly. Mark Zuckerberg married a non-Jew. Doesn't seem like that was an important factor for him in his life, which is very sad. That doesn't mean they reflect or represent us as a whole. Very successful guy. I'm sure we can learn a lot from him. But from a Jewish perspective, it doesn't seem much that he's a person that we say, okay, well he's a quintessential Jew. No, not really. Which leads me to the last part. Anytime you rely on your level of understanding, anytime you rely on your level of what you think is right or wrong, your perception of it, it always is a very dangerous concept. Always. And this is what the spies did exactly. The biggest sin the spies did is they relied only on what they understood. And they understood things based on what they wanted. And therefore, that's why the sin was such an awful sin. Because when we do that, we take it into our own hands, and it becomes political. We manipulate the system, and we do things in a way that's not intended. And that was the biggest issue. That's why it was such a big sin. And also, one thing we were trying to say. We were trying to understand. The second thing we were trying to understand is why they did tshuva. They did do tshuva. Because God told them the first go around. What did He say? God says, go, the land is good. The second go around, after they realized, no, we don't want to go. God, we're not going. The land is bad. What did they do afterwards? They felt bad. They made a mistake. God, we're sorry. You said we sinned. This is what they said. You said we sinned. What does that mean? You said you sinned. Maybe someone got you upset. They hurt your feelings. They say, listen, I didn't hurt your feelings, but if you got hurt, I'm sorry. What kind of answer is that? Well, I mean, I didn't do it, but if you got offended, I'm sorry. No, that's not a genuine, real apology. That doesn't demonstrate I actually care. I did something wrong. Well, you're giving lip service. You're trying to say, oh, I apologize, but you don't know. You're not acknowledging that something actually happened here. And so by them, no, God, listen, it was always ended up on what their level of understanding. The land was bad, their understanding the first go around. God said it's good. They didn't go up to the land. Now now God says no. You didn't think it was good? Not a problem. Now you're not going, it's not good for you, just like you thought it was. And you know what? They ended up going, no, God, it's good. They did exactly the same sin. Nothing actually changed. Today, this is when we do things based on my understanding. Today I said a joke to my wife. The only problem was, only one of us thought it was funny, and it wasn't me. So, and this is things, even in the little things, you find it to be the truth here. The last thing I want to share is that the way that the Torah actually ends last week's parasha is Miriam spoke Lashon Hara. She spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe. That's what the rabbis tell us. And the rabbis say, how fool are the spies? They learned and knew that Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe. They didn't learn not to speak Lashon Hara about the land. So what did Miriam speak Lashon Hara about? Anybody know? Miriam said, you know, Moshe, she heard Tzipporah. Tzipporah is the wife of Moshe. This is exactly what happened. Tzipporah, she is in the tent together with Miriam, and she sees that two men by the name of Eldad and Medad are getting prophecy. They're experiencing and getting prophecy. And Miriam is very happy. She's like, wow, how fortunate are the wives of Eldad and Medad that their husbands are now prophets. Tzipporah hears this and says, she's like, fortunate? I feel bad for their wives. Why do you feel bad? Miriam asks. Because now their husbands are going to leave them. Why would they leave them? Because Moshe left me. Moshe left me. At that point, Tzipporah was separated from Moshe. So now, since they're prophets, they're going to have to leave their wives. What does Miriam do? She comes to Aaron. She says, Aaron, wait a second. I'm a prophet, and I have to leave my husband, or prophetess in her case. You're a prophet. You have to leave your wife. Why did Moshe leave his wife? That's what she said. Which means, if you look closely, she saw things specifically from her reality, from her level of understanding. And when you do stuff like that, she didn't realize that Moshe was at a different level. In fact, God gave him a hint. Immediately when she spoke Lashon Hara, God immediately appeared to them. And you know what happened? They freaked out, because God never immediately appears to anybody else, with one exception, Moshe. Moshe, he always appears to him. So when Aaron and Miriam realized God is appearing to them immediately, they freaked out. They put a lot of water on them. They wanted to make sure they're clean, because they weren't in that state that Moshe Rabbeinu was always at. So he was hinting them, you're not the same level. From your perspective, you realize you can still be together with your husband. Aaron can be together with his wife. But Moshe's perspective, you don't understand his perspective. You said what you said because from your perception of reality, you could be together. But not from Moshe Rabbeinu's perspective. So you use, and that's what made you speak Lashon Hara. And oftentimes, our perception of a reality is how careful we need to be in this, right? And this is where I go back to tefillah. You go back to tefillah, even if you do something wrong, and you ask, even if the rabbi was wrong, and you pray, after 120, you come to Hashem, I did what you told me to do, it's in the book. I went to the rabbi and I prayed. Hashem says, you're right. You did everything. Everything was right. Can't complain. And so, this is one of the biggest things, how careful we should be in any decision we make. The critical ones, obviously who we choose to marry, if we want to get into business partnership with somebody, how we raise the kids, what school we send the kids to, anything you do, what type of relationship you're going to have with potentially your in-laws, or the type of relationship, maybe you don't have the best relationship with your parents right now. Okay, what could you do with it? Because when you grow up and you get married, it's going to affect you. And when you have children, they're also going to have courtside seats to your relationship with your parents. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just internalize it. There's things that we can do. We don't allow just our understanding to drive us. It should enhance our life, our quality of experience, and the quality of Shabbat, and the quality of eating food, and everything. It should enhance it, but it should not be the reason we do it because we understand it. And if that's the case, then essentially we're like nobody else. We're driven by the Sefer Torah. We're driven by understanding the Torah through the rabbis, through the Chachamim. Nobody is perfect, obviously. But but this is how we've been doing it, and this is how we'll continue to do it, and this is what made us get to where we get to today. Are there any questions? Any questions, concern? Nothing. It's just too late, right? That's the reason. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.